Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 29 of Quattroporte, the review series for Gran Turismo's current selection of sports saloons or sedans, and of course also super saloons. And in this particular episode we're featuring one of the slightly lower level sports saloons. It doesn't have the range of something like an M5 of course, but it's quite a characterful car. It has a little bit of a cult following on Gran Turismo, kind of like vehicles like the Volvo 240, that kind of thing. Not a massively popular model, but the people who do like the car tend to like it a lot. And the car is the 2001 Volkswagen Bora, known also as the Jetta in America, and it's essentially a Golf with a boot. That's pretty much to sum up the car. Now that said, the Golf is also a very popular model and makes a good platform for being a performance car with the GTI, the VR6s of days gone by, the R32 of course, and various others. So the Bora has an innate ability which, if it does live up to, as the Golf does, or as well as the Golf does, could be a brilliant little sports sedan. However, not to get anyone's hopes up, this car unfortunately is not rendered well enough into the game in order to actually reach that potential. And that's a real shame, because the car does deserve that. There are lots of cars which deserve to be better than they are on Gran Turismo, and this is one of them, because this car has a very good starting spec. It has a 2.8 litre engine which is naturally aspirated in stock form, with the potential to put out some pretty decent power. Now, fully tuned, it does put out 358 brake horsepower, so it's not underwhelming, but that's still naturally aspirated. This car deserves a turbo, or at the very least a supercharger. It should be easily putting out over 400 horsepower, but it doesn't. It also puts out 302 pound-feet of torque, which shows the torque potential of the engine, that it puts that out despite again being naturally aspirated. And that's a shame, because this car should be running almost the same kind of numbers as a, say, Mark IV Golf R32. It doesn't of course have the same level of engine potential as that car, but it should be running similar numbers, around 400 horsepower at least, and around 350 pound-feet of torque surely, if not more, if it were allowed to have said turbo or supercharger. Now, add that to the fact that it is all-wheel drive and relatively compact, and you've got yourself a potentially fantastic sleeper car that could be the perfect rival for vehicles like the Impreza and the Evo. But what we end up with is a car which is certainly not bad, but is delivered in such a way that it ends up only being a rival, really, to stuff like the Vectra. And that's a real shame, because this car should be a lot better than that. Now, I'm not saying it's the same as a Vectra. I would say this is better. It's also better than most of the, say, Citroën sedans and most of those other lower level sports sedans which tend to be overlooked. Of those vehicles, the Bora is probably the best. And it's one of the rare few to have all-wheel drive. But still, it deserves far more than that. It doesn't deserve to be the best of the lowest class. It deserves to be a real contender in at least the mid-level of sports saloons, and it just doesn't. Compound that with the fact that it's not particularly cheap either, at just under 40,000 credits. So it's not really a bargain either, unfortunately, being a kind of semi-premium vehicle, not in its visuals but in real life, the amount of kit that you get, etc. It's a semi-premium car. It's not a full-on luxury car of course, but more than your average Vectra, etc. Now it weighs in at a pretty decent 1,232 kilos, and for an all-wheel drive sedan that is very good, mainly due to its compact size, and it does manage to put out 291 horsepower per tonne, which again is decent considering it doesn't have a huge amount of power to work with. The PP, thankfully, and this is a very big consolation, is only 480 fully tuned, and that's good. You really wouldn't want it to be any higher than that, because at that level, or even more so when you go lower to say 475 or even 450, it is actually a competitive car. It has a lot of power for that PP level and a good overall spec for that PP level. So overall, would I recommend the Bora? Well, it's difficult to say, because the Bora is one of those vehicles which I certainly wouldn't say is a bad car. It's definitely not. But no fault to the car, it's actually the fault to Polyphony, but they've made the car too niched. It deserves to have more range, but it's just not given that chance. So this is a car I would say for fans only, because vehicles like the Golf R, the R32, the Scirocco R, the Beetle RSI, other brilliant performance cars from Volkswagen, have very wide ranges of potential. This car deserves that, but doesn't deliver on it. So I just can't recommend it on the same level as some of the other sports saloons. However, of the lower level sports saloons, as I mentioned, it is one of the best. So overall, I could potentially recommend this car, depending on what you're looking for. But that's it for this episode overall. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.